Alright, welcome to the Management System training videos. In this version of the training video, we have started to open up the program after we initially installed it. One of the first things it's going to ask you is what specialty edition of the program you have. We have Point of Sale Management System, Automotive Service Management System, Bridal and Formal, Business, Dealer Management System, Dry Cleaner, Fixed Based Operations, Golf Pro Shop, Grocery Store Management System, Liquor Store Management System, Marble and Granite Management System, Quick Touch Restaurant Management System, Reward Keeper Management System, Salon Pro Management System, and Smoke Shop Pro Management System. Selecting any of these specific specialties turns on features that are unique to that industry. For this demo, we're just going to leave it for the Point of Sale Management System, and we'll click Close. It will be open up the program and begin running through a reindex of the data files that we just recently installed on here. This will take just a few moments, and then we'll be ready to begin going through the initial setup. If you were installing this on a second workstation after you had already went through this process on your main computer or on your server, it will initially ask you to select where your data files are located, and we'll go through that process in another video. Okay, here we need to you can read through these terms. You need to agree to these terms in order to be able to access the program. It's checking real quickly to see if we have updates, and now we'll begin. Right now we don't have the software registered, and we can go through the registration process later, but for now we want to just do some initial features to set it up. Let's review how we get around here. I can go up here to Customer Support and go to Customer Maintenance, or I can click on this Customer Maintenance button. It'll take us to the same spot. Likewise, I can go to Inventory Control, Inventory Maintenance, or click on Inventory Control button. So these are all just fast access buttons. This is for the sales, point of sale and invoicing screen, customers again, inventory again. This is for messages I can check and leave for people or have messages left for myself. This is the scheduler. This is the time clock for clocking in and out. This will get me into contacts. Contacts would be additional information you want to keep on, say, prospective contacts. This is why I want to view employee sales for specific employees. Had I logged into this version, which we don't have it set up to log in under a specific user ID and password, this will give me the option to log out, and here we'll exit the program. So for now, let's go to Management Utilities, Employee Maintenance. In here, we'll need to set up an employee. If I want to add a new employee, I would just click Add a new employee record. This is requiring my password because this is password protected. I enter the employee ID here. Usually that's just their initials. This could be any alphanumeric character up to 6 characters long. Their first name and last name. I can enter the rest of this demographic information for them if I like. I can assign a department to them. There's nothing in the department drop down now, so if I click the edit button, I can add a department in here. So let's say we'll add a new department, and we'll call this department Management. And we'll close. Now we go here, we have a department called Management. We can assign this to it. This allows us to generate reports and other information based on the department we have this employee selected into. So let's just put in here initials. We'll put JSS, and first name is good John, and we'll do Smith. Down here, we're going to assign a security level of 0. This would give access to anything. If we assigned a security level of 50, as an example, then someone that's at a level 50 will be able to access anything we designate level 50 or higher. We'll go through those security settings momentarily once we finish setting up this employee record. So now that I've assigned an employee, I've assigned the security level, I'm going to need to enter a password for this employee. I'll enter a password here. And press enter. It's going to ask me to verify the password, make sure I typed it in correctly, and that password's in there. I can also look on the earnings screen. On the earnings screens, I can enter in the date hired, last raise date, date they were terminated. I can enter whether they're salary or hourly employee. I can enter in the rate here that they get paid. I can enter the frequency that they get paid. In this case, we'll say weekly. I can also select start and stop times. And this is entered in a 24-hour format. So if this employee worked from 9 to 5, I'd enter in 9 o'clock through 1700, which would be 5 o'clock p.m. Now, if the employee gets to the place of employment and clocks in at 8:45, it won't start calculating their start times until 9 o'clock. Likewise, if they clock out at 5:05, it'll end their clock out time at 5 o'clock. Now, if the employee had to stay because they were busy and you authorized them to work until, say, 5:30, after they clocked out, you could go back in and edit their time and allow them to get paid beyond that 5 o'clock start and stop time. So we'll close here. Job order numbers. Under job orders, we can see job orders that this employee was assigned to. That's if you're doing work orders where specific people have to be assigned to a work order to get that work done. I can also select here to look up labor items for this employee that they can use when they're clocking in and out. On this information here, I have any background check information I want to enter, any health or dental insurance agreements that we've done. If I click on certifications, if they have a certification number, I can enter it here. Any training and certification information, any job performance evaluations that you've done. And if we go down to the commissions tab, I can determine whether this is a salesperson that gets no sales commission, whether the commissions are based on net sales, whether commissions are based on sales profit, or whether this is not a salesperson at all. If I check that it's not a salesperson, then throughout the system where it asks me who is the salesperson that is I'm supposed to assign to this transaction or to the sale, this person won't show up in that list, so it minimizes the number of people that are available to select from there. So in this case, let's select that this is based on sales profit. So if they're based on sales profit, I can say that they're going to get commissions on items. And if I don't check on services, then they will not get commissions on services. They just get commissions on items. Let's go through the items. I can also define that they have to have a minimum item net sales in order to be eligible. So let's say they have to have at least $100 in sales to be eligible for commission. And then that sales amount has to be between, for a weekly period, let's say they have to be between $0 and $1,000. So if they did between $0 and $1,000, they're going to get a 10% commission, and they're not going to get any additional amount. They have to first meet this $100 minimum requirement. Now I can say that it's greater than $1,000 and less than $10,000, and now they're going to get a 15% commission, plus they're going to get an additional $50 bonus. Then I can continue this on to up to 4 levels. I can also do the same types of commissions for services with their own rates for the different services. We'll close this employee record now. We can see we have the employee entered in here. And let's quit out of here and we'll go on to system settings. So now that we've gone to management utilities and employee maintenance and entered an employee, now we can come down here to security settings, global, which will apply to everybody, and we can just define what security settings we want different people to be at. We have some default ones that are already set up here, and it'll tell you up here if there's anything that's assigned 99 does not require a password. Level 0 is the highest security level, level 99 is the lowest security level. And again, a user with a level 50 can access anything level 50 or higher. So typically we may set up 3 or 4 different security levels. You'll have a level 0, which may be the owner and or manager. You might have a level 20, which is maybe an assistant manager. Maybe you have a level 30, which is another level of access that you want to give to people. And then there's level 99 or any levels in between there. This daily tasks menu applies to things that are on your daily task menu up here. Customers, likewise, applies to customer support. And if we jump over here to management, the management menu, this applies to stuff in the management menu, which we are in right now, security settings global. And you can see here that if we're under this management menu, security settings, now that we've set a security level at level 0 for John Smith, we can set this to level 0. So no one else can get in here unless they have a security level of 0. We can also set station settings to level 0 and system settings global to level 0. There's no reason, once this stuff is set up, there's no reason for anybody to normally get into these levels. If we decided we wanted to set a manager to level 20 and give him access to these things, then we can just put level 20 in here, level 20 in here. But I would still recommend leaving security settings at 0, so only people at level 0 can get in and change any of the security settings located in this area. I'm not going to go through each of these things, but they're pretty much self-explanatory. As you go through each of these items in here, you can determine what you want to give access to and at what level. It goes for daily task, customers, inventory, reports, management processes, and if you have the accounts payable module, payable functions, and general ledger. So let's close this, and now we will go to management utilities and system settings global. Security settings global we're just in applies to everybody in the system. System settings global applies to everybody. Station settings local would apply to just this specific workstation. For example, you can define which printer you want to print to if there's a cash drawer attached. So we'll go to System Settings Global now. Now I can enter in my initials, JSS, and I'll enter my password that we assigned, and that allows us in. Otherwise, it would tell us our security level wasn't authorized. Here's our system registration information. In order to register the software, we would need to go in here, and we would enter in our company name, address, city, state, and zip. You'd enter the serial number that you were given and which features were enabled for your software. Under the station settings, I can go through all of these things here are pretty much self-explanatory. I can enter start and stop times for reports. Normally it's from 12 in the morning till 11:59 p.m. But let's say that this happens to be a bar and you're open until 2 o'clock in the morning. I would want my daily reports to start at maybe 3 o'clock a.m. and run until 2:59 a.m. the next morning. That way, when I open the business on Monday, it would go from Monday at 3 o'clock in the morning until Tuesday morning at 2:59, and that would cover an entire day for my sales reports. So I can go through here. As I click on each of these, a little help screen should pop up, which better defines what each of those features are for. I'm going to go through each of these right now, but I will go through this customer list. This is list lookup screen. So if I go on this customer list, this is how my customer lookup screen defaults to. But let's say I wanted the phone number to be over here and before the company. Or if I scroll down here and I had their email address or their membership number, I want that to show up first. I can just click on this, click and drag it over, and leave it wherever I want it. I want that between the name and the phone number. And this is how I want that screen to default look like when I pop it up and I click on save, and it will save those settings. So I'm going to quit here. That's also for contact lists, order recall, inventory list, vendor list, and the point of sale invoicing screen. Under dunning messages, if I have accounts receivable, these are my default dunning messages that print on my statements based on how old their invoices are. I can go through each of these items here, and they're pretty self-explanatory as you go through these on all the systems. Customer field labels. In the customer record, there's a fields called customer field 1 through 10, date fields, number fields, date of birth, that kind of stuff. So instead of customer field 1 being just saying customer field, I can type in here that I want that field to say spouse name. Now on every employee, customer field 1 will say spouse, and then I can put in the spouse name there. Likewise, I can do that with inventory field labels, my different price levels. So let's say price level B is for wholesale customers. So I'll type in wholesale here, and we'll see that when we go to a later training video for customers. Quick charge setup is for doing credit card processing. We'll do that in a later video. Let's skip to default tab. Again, there's a lot of information here. This would be your employee payroll week starts on, what day of the week it starts. If it starts Monday, when you go into customer history, whether you want it to default to displaying the company name or the customer name, depending on the type of business you have. And then you can go through each of these different settings here. Again, we won't go through all of these, but I will touch base on a couple. Default margin to use for cost on zero cost items. So if you have items that don't have a cost in there, but we want to sell them, and we have a selling price of say $10. If I put there we want a 50% margin, then it'll automatically calculate my cost for my profit and margin reports and my sales reports at half of what my selling price is. In this case, if it was $10, the cost would be $5. These are all pretty much self-explanatory. You can go through each of these. I recommend that you go through each of these, and even if you're not turning anything on at a later date, you may recall that, oh yes, I can turn that feature on and off, and they're all here and available. This is if I'm doing gift cards, what gift card department I have, what coupon department, and there's 2 available coupon departments. Some of these other things we'll go through in a later video for setting up gift cards. These default gift cards, coupons, and coupon departments must remain in the system, which you'll see here when we had departments, and we could add other departments as we go. Multi-site, if you had multiple locations, this would set up and define what features are available for which location of your multi-site. These are default pricing information. Most of this stuff is set up as defaults, but you can come down through here, and again, we recommend that you go through and read all this stuff so you know what's there and make any changes that you want for the way your system works. For example, let's look at default price level. Normally everybody is at a price level A, and this will tell you that when you click on the button. But I can say that at this particular location we want to use price level C, maybe because we have other competition in the area and we want to give better prices here. Or maybe we want to use price level C because we don't have other competition and we can get more for items than we can at our other areas where we do have competition. So I can define what price level I want to be the default price level for this location. I can also tell it that I don't want employees to see any other price levels by checking this box. They will only see this price level. We'll turn that off because we're going to want to see that later. If you had the general ledger, we've set up our default general ledger accounts here, enter beginning balances. And there's additional settings here. This is whether we're going to charge monthly finance charges if you have the accounts receivable module, how we're going to age invoices, what the finance charge rates are, what the default customer terms are. This is an important item here if we have multiple locations. If I click on this independent register closeouts at each station, then each station will be responsible for the cash in the drawer. If I don't have this checked, then I will just do one closeout and that'll close out all the registers. But if I'm doing that, then I can't account for cash in one drawer because they're all getting combined together. So if you have multiple workstations, multiple registers, we recommend that you have this box checked. And then down here again, you can go through this stuff, whether I require a customer before each transaction, whether I require a customer when an item is returned, whether if I want a prompt for the original invoice when an item is returned. So I would recommend that you read through each of these. We do have some default ones that we recommend you have selected. And down here is just what information I want to print on invoices, whether I want to display the quantity available in lieu of the quantity on hand. Again, you can go through all of these. And under settings too, we have some additional features, whether you're using our online backup and what your user login and password is. I would recommend that you click on OK to delete item. Otherwise, the system will, if I'm in the invoicing screen and I click the delete button, it'll just automatically delete what item I have selected on the screen. This will check to make sure that I have the right item selected. I don't inadvertently delete something I didn't intend to. And if I also check this one, then it'll also prompt me for the line number that I want to delete, just again to confirm that I'm deleting the right one. If we enable exact match on SKU not found, what this will do is when I'm looking up an item and I look up an item and the SKU I'm looking up is 1234, and there's not a 1234 in the system, but there's a 1235, it would go to that next that next item alphabetically in the system. If I enable this checkbox, it'll still go to that next item, but it'll also tell me that it wasn't an exact match, was not found. That way I don't inadvertently start editing item 1235 when I was really editing item 1234, or was my intention. All right, so we'll close this now, and now we'll go through station settings local, and that would apply to just this specific workstation. And here I'm going to enter our password again, user ID and password. This is for John Smith was JSS, and JSS is what we set up. Here's the location of our data files. If this is a multi-user system, this is where I'll have to define where the location of the data files are on each additional workstation. The data files will only be located on your main computer or your server. If this is an additional workstation, I may want to select Enable Emergency Standalone Mode. What this will do is, and I would normally do this just for other workstations where we're doing invoice transactions, and that way if something should happen, you have a hardware issue where the server's not available, the network goes down, these individual workstations would continue to be able to wait on customers, ring up transactions, get them in and out of the store. So if we had an additional workstation, we would check this box. Okay, so down here we would define what printers we have, where our reports go to. I select a report printer, what printer our labels go to. If I'm not printing labels, I'll just select that same default report printer. Which printer I want my invoices to print to. I might want those to print to a 40-column printer. I'll select this one, which is my receipt printer. I may want them to print to I may want my accounts receivable charges to print in a full 8.5 by 11 size to my report printer. And then this is where my orders, quotes, layaways are going to print to. Again, I'll say that these are going to print to my 40-column printer, which is my receipt printer. This is my paper cutter string. This is normal default cutter string for all receipt printers, but I can change that here if I need to. I can also tell it to print by customer type, so I don't have any customer types defined yet, but if I did define a customer type in here, and let's say we'll add edit, we'll add a customer type in here, and we'll call this wholesale customer. And we'll also type in the description here, being wholesale, and we'll close, and close again. Now we have customer types here. We don't. Oh, this one, let's exit back out. I'll come back in here to get that one to refresh. Station settings, local is where we're at. JSS, and we'll click back on our printing by customer type. Now we have wholesale in there. And this is edit printing by customer type. So now we would say that when we select a wholesale customer, we want the first invoice to print to this printer, and which invoice format we want it to print to, whether we want a 40-column, 80-column, with or without discounts, etc. And then we will want our second invoice to print to. Again, maybe we hit print a 40-column invoice on a receipt printer, and then we print an 80-column invoice to our 8.5 by 11 printer because they want a full-size invoice to take back to their corporate office. Let's close this window. These are my default lookup information, whether I want to look up in uppercase only, because the system does differentiate between upper and lowercase when you're looking up items by description or by SKU or vendor item number, however you're looking them up. Whether I want to enable customer auto lookup, which means when I go into the customer screen, if this is checked, it'll automatically look up by last name. If I want to automatically look up by company, because I do more business with companies than individuals, I may want it to look up by company number or by their email address or by their phone number, so I can select how I want that to pop up here. Likewise, I can select how my inventory auto lookups. So I can say I will automatically want to do a lookup by SKU as soon as you go into an inventory record. If I click on this stay on F6 lookup screen, and this tells me what that basically means is that when I go into the lookup screen and I check on this box, once I select an item, it'll stay on that lookup screen, so I continue to select multiple items from that lookup screen without exiting. Down here we have login and carry security level throughout the system. If this box is checked, then as soon as I go into the management system, it's going to ask for my user ID and password. Once I enter that in, and if I'm at level 0, it'll never ask me my password again. If I enter that in and I'm at a level 10, it won't ask me my password unless I'm trying to get into something that's below my security level. So this I would normally do if I had this set up at my desk, for example. That way, once I log in, I don't have to fool with entering security levels unless I'm trying to get in something below my security level. If I'm at the workstations that are scattered throughout the building, or I'm bringing up transactions or looking up inventory items, normally I would uncheck that, because if I had that checked and was checked in at my security level and I walked away from that workstation, anybody that walked up to that workstation would be at my security level and be able to get into anything. I'm going to click this automatically resize forms. That way you'll see, depending on the resolution of our screens on a specific workstation, this will automatically resize my form to fit that screen, so I don't have a high screen resolution and a very small screen in the middle that I'm trying to read on. Whether or not I'm using fingerprint reader, whether I want to disable the navigation buttons. Over here we have the option to set this station in training mode. We'll go through that in a later video, but this allows me to put this in training mode, and if I have a new employee, I can go through and ring up transactions, do everything except do a credit card transaction, and it doesn't affect any of my live data. When I'm done, I just uncheck the training mode button, take it back out of training mode, and I'm ready to go, and they're still confident that they're ready to use the system. And down here, again, I won't go through every single one of these, but whether or not I have a touchscreen monitor in use, whether I want to save the customer check information, whether I want to require for customer checks, whether I want to use a floating decimal so it doesn't have to ask me on the invoicing screen. If I want to enter in $5, I would just type in 500. I don't have to type in 5.00. If I wanted to enter $5.25, I would just enter 5.25. If I don't have floating decimal checked, then I would have to enter 5.25. So most people are used to using a regular register. They normally have a floating decimal enabled. And whether or not this is other information, whether I want to show minimum data, whether I allow item inquiry only at this workstation. Again, this is station settings and applies only to this workstation. Whether I want to validate an employee's initials when they go into the invoicing screen. Whether I want to prompt for the employee login and password. And if so, do I want to have it log out after, say, 300 seconds or 5 minutes? So if I was ringing up transactions, I'm busy waiting on customers, it's not going to ask me for my ID unless the point of sale transaction screen is inactive for 300 seconds or 5 minutes in this case. And then it will prompt me automatically to ask for my ID again. I'll change this back to 0 for our demo modes, but that's what. So I'm going to have it ask me for my employee ID and my password. I can tell it to prompt for an employee after every transaction, prompt for an employee on the total, and whether I wanted to force it, update all line items, or select specific line items. This would be if I am paying commissions, I may want to prompt for the employee, so I might be ringing up the transaction, but the salesperson that's supposed to be getting the commissions is actually somebody else. So I could assign those line items or all line items for that transaction to a specific employee, not the person that's ringing it up. Whether or not the required employee to be clocked in or not before they can get into the point of sale transactions. And that's using our time clock system. Whether I want to prompt for every SKU on every item, or I'm sorry, for the quantity of every SKU on item. Whether I want to prompt for the price on all SKUs. So every time I select an item, it would stop and ask me the price. If I check this box, it'll stop and ask me the price, but only items that have a 0 price. So for example, if I'm new to using the system and I have a gallon of milk in there and I haven't assigned a price to it, when I sell that gallon of milk, the first time it's going to ask me for the price. I type in a gallon of milk is $3.59. The next time I select that gallon of milk, it will automatically know that's priced and will only ask me for the price of items that have 0. Whether I want to update customer contract prices, and we'll go through contract prices in a different video. whether I want to prompt for the customer lookup before each transaction, whether I want to prompt for shipping information on all transactions, or maybe just for accounts receivable charges because they want to enter a purchase order number or other information, whether I want to cancel line items in lieu of deleting, use the extended edit options. These are all features that can be turned on and off depending on how you specifically want your system to look and feel and how you want it to work. And you can go through and experiment with some of these, just turn them on and off, go to the invoicing screen, see what a difference it makes, and you can be able to determine that for yourself. Here, if we sell liquor, what the minimum age is to buy liquor. If we sell cigarettes, what the minimum age is to buy cigarettes. If we don't sell cigarettes, and I don't want it to pop up, I can just change that to 0. Likewise, with the liquor age, I can also change that to 0 if I don't sell liquor, so that age won't pop up on the screen for me. Number of decimals for quantity and weight. Usually we don't, but you have any decimals for quantity. But if you are selling stuff by weight, you're probably going to want at least 2 decimal points in there so we can enter a fractional quantity. Or perhaps you are in a business that you sell labor. You sell labor by fractional amounts, quarter hour, half hour, however it is. In that case, you'll want to have decimals for your quantity and weight. Number of decimals for price and cost. Normally we have only 2 decimals for our price and cost, but you may be in a type of business where you need 3 decimals for your cost, which is also going to select 3 decimals for your price, but when it extends it, that's the price of each item, but when it extends it, it'll be the default 2 decimal place. We'll leave this at 2 decimals. If you do layaways, what is the percentage of a deposit you require on layaways? How many seconds after you finish a transaction will it pause before clearing the total screen? So here it defaults to 30 seconds. Typically you may want 15 seconds in here. That'll leave the change due on the screen long enough for you to put items in the bag, give them change out of the drawer, and then automatically go on to the next transaction. If you happen to finish that before the screen clears, just touch the screen anywhere or click on it, and then you continue on until it's ready for the next transaction, so it doesn't have to wait the entire 15 seconds in this case. If I had another payment type, I can enter it here. Maybe we do EBT through a separate EBT computer or EBT machine rather than through a credit card machine connected to the computer. In this case, I may want to type in EBT in here. That way, on my closeout reports, I'll be able to determine how much was ringed through EBT or cash, check, credit card as a separate item. Likewise, I could do trade or whatever other items I may want to put in here. We'll move on to the hardware screen. This is whether we have a cash drawer enabled, which workstation this is. So if this was the main workstation, this would be workstation number 1. The next workstation would be workstation number 2, etc. So on your reports, you can determine which items will ring up at which workstation. So this goes here with whether I have a cash drawer enabled, whether it's 1 or 2 cash drawers, how they're physically connected, whether I have a pull display, whether I'm using the advertising display, whether I want to display only 1 line item on the advertising display. So other information here, the welcome to message, depending on setting up your advertising display. If you have caller ID, this would be the COM port for the caller ID. If you're taking orders over the phone and doing deliveries, you'd want to have that. Time clock scanner port. This is if you have another workstation that's just doing time clocks. You can define what port the scanner's on. If you're taking checks and you want to have a micro reader, which port the micro's on. If you're taking pictures of people, you can which port that's on. And if you're scanning driver's license, checks, that kind of stuff, you can have which port that's on. I can also go down here and click on this button. If I'm using a portable data collector, I can select what type of data collector I'm using and the different setting information I want for that data collector. So let's close this window. Down here, the system will beep on items found, not found, different sounds, so that you know just by scanning stuff. If for some reason I don't have a sound card in this workstation, physically don't have it, I can check that box. Otherwise, it's going to try and generate a sound, and if there's no sound card, an error message is going to pop up. This area would be set up if we're doing credit card processing. We'd recommend that you get a hold of us to get that set up correctly. It is a little bit technically involved. Credit cards, what credit card you take. If we don't take American Express and someone selects American Express, that won't allow it to go through. Whether you do EBT here, whether you want to prompt for the zip code or for the CVV code when you're doing a credit card transaction. Here we can disable other payment types. I can disable charge account or that other or EBT one that we selected, or store credits. Down here I can select whether I'm using a 2D scanner to read driver's license. So if I'm adding a new employee and I have a 2D scanner as opposed to a 1D scanner, a one-dimensional scanner is just a series of lines across. A two-dimensional barcode looks just like a bunch of garbled data, but a 2D scanner will read that. And if I'm entering a new employee and click on the 2D scanner, then it will enter in all of the employee information: first name, last name, address, date of birth, driver's license number will all be automatically entered into the employee record just as a function of scanning that 2D barcode. Whether I want to use a signature capture device for house charges. So if I'm selling stuff and I have house charge accounts, if I click on the signature, turn the signature capture device on, and I have a signature capture device, then when they charge an account, they can just sign on the signature pad. We can tell it to automatically email that invoice with their signature on it. I could print a copy of that invoice to a laser printer with that signature on it, or 2 months from now I can print it from history with that signature on it. So that's what the signature capture device is. Whether I'm printing barcode printers and how I want to set those barcode printers up. Some of this stuff we would still, again, recommend that you contact our office for specific details. Print settings, if I'm a restaurant, well, this will be going through later, but this is all has to do with the restaurant and how I want, whether I'm doing carryouts, deliveries, all types of stuff for restaurants, which kitchen printer I'm using, etc. Down here, I select by default how many number of invoice copies I want to print. How many copies I want to print if it's an AR charge. If it's a credit card, how many copies I want to print. Number of order quote layaway copies. And down here, I would define which invoice type I want to print. So if I'm printing to a receipt printer, then I will want to select one of these 40-column printers that are available from this list. And then each of these can be modified in additional to what's default settings for it. If I'm printing an accounts receivable charge and want it to go to an 8.5 by 11 full-size laser printer, for example, then I would want to select one of my 80-column reports so that it prints in that correct format to that printer. And down here I can select whether I want to automatically print a gift receipt for each transaction. You may want to do that in a holiday period. And this depends on what type of hardware I have. Will I print in generic text format? Whether I print a separate earned credits report if no receipt is printed, but they are earning credits through our rewards program, I might want to print that. Over here I have my invoice message, where we may want to type in here, thank you for shopping with us. This will print on each 40-column receipt, and I can have two messages. This is another message that prints on a 40-column receipt. And then down here I can have a message that prints at the bottom of my 8.5 by 11 full-size sheet. If I click on the Save as Global Message, then when I'm doing other workstations, instead of having to type this all over again, I can just click on Import Global Message and it'll update all this information. Okay, we'll go close out and other settings. We're getting through this. This is when I do a closeout, whether I want to enable remote closeouts or not. This will be gone through in detail in another video. Whether I want to print on a 40-column printer, my receipt printer, or I want it to print to my reports printer. So whether I want to suppress cash checks, etc. during the closeout. What this does is check by default, and what that means is it won't display this information as part of the closeout display on the screen. That way, the employee that's closing out won't know if they're over or short until they've actually committed to the closeout process. We do this just for security reasons. So if we have a less than honest employee and they close out and see that they, for whatever reason, happen to be $20 over, they could cancel the transaction, put $20 in their pocket, and then do a re-close out and tell it that there's $20 less in the drawer. This, by having this check, that will prevent them to do that, because they won't know if they're over or short or not until after they've already committed and generated the reports. So we're going to leave this on a 40-column printer. These are the reports that we want to print every time we do a closeout. End of day report normally. Currency totals is kind of redundant. Some customers like to see it. Sales report by department. So this will print on my 40-column printer. with just a summary of my sales. If I had any expense paydowns, it would print. If I wanted to see an hourly sales report for this workstation all day long, I would leave that report on. If I don't want to see it, I would uncheck it. Down here, if we didn't have this printed on a 40-column printer, these are additional reports I could print out every closeout. Keep in mind that you can reprint any of these reports at any time, so they don't need to be generated every time you do a closeout, but some people like to see specific reports for every closeout, and you can always go back and print any of these other reports later. Again, we have a lot of check boxes here on how we want the system to work. As I click on each of these, you can see that stuff pops up that further explains what these options are for. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but there are a couple I'm going to check. I'm going to check on require payment type. What that means is when I'm on my total screen, it'll ask me, I'll have to select whether I want to do cash, check, credit card, as opposed to defaulting to cash. That way I have less employees inadvertently ringing up something as a check or as cash when it was supposed to be a check, for example. So I will leave that on. I also want to click on this beep on items found on point of sale invoicing screen, because every time you scan something, your scanner is going to beep if it reads a valid barcode. That doesn't mean that the item that it scanned is in your computer inventory file. So by doing this, they'll hear a second beep. It says a valid item in the inventory file, and they'll hear a loud alert noise that will alert them that the item, we scanned it read a valid barcode off the item, but it didn't find a matching item in the inventory file. So that they can check and add the item as a blank item, or find out whatever was wrong with that item, but at least we're not scanning it, giving it to the customer without getting charged for it. So there's other additional information you go through here. This area has to do with employee time clock. So I can disable time clock entries at this workstation, so I can designate just one workstation that they're eligible to clock in and out on. This way, if the times are off a few minutes on one computer versus another, they're always clocking in and out on the same computer, and no one's getting cheated, either the owner or the employee, because they're losing a few minutes between the time on one or the other computer. And down here we have disable auto purchase order for committed items, disable wild lookup, and as you click on these, it gives you all that information. This information here is if you have a scale and scanner combination or just a scale attached. So these are all hardware settings, and different settings will be turned on and off depending on how you want the system to work. On this last tab, we have backup and other information. So I can tell that I want to automatically do backups at this workstation when I select my end of day closeout, as opposed to a shift closeout. It'll automatically back them up, and I can tell it where I want to put the backup files. So I can say, well, just put them to my drive C here. Whether any message I want to prompt at the end of every transaction. So if I check that box, this message will pop up. Did you check under the cart? And they're going to have to click yes or no to that message on every transaction when they select the total screen. So this could be any message I wanted to put in here. And uncheck that for now. And then how I want my system to look. We'll go through this later in another video, but this is my invoicing screen. Whether I want to disable grid lines, do I want a black background instead of a white background? Whether I want to use a vertical grid, which means all my buttons are located vertically instead of horizontally across the bottom of the screen. That pretty much sets it up for station settings local. There is a couple other things down here where they want auto completion and customer lookup, or they want auto completion and inventory lookup, and or for vendor lookup. I may select it recommend it for customer lookup and vendor lookup. Typically you don't want it for inventory lookup, because it may end up jumping ahead if you type the wrong character way out of where you're planning on going. So those would be my recommended settings. So we'll close this. That does it for entering employee, security settings, system settings, and station settings for this video. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks for watching.